the idea of discussing empowerment or the real way to find our power. This is, I've hesitated for many years to really talk about or address the topic of power or empowerment because it's such an abused topic. I mean, it's nauseating, the whole, in your power, they took my power away. And I know some of us that are watching have said this, so please be patient and hang in there for a minute. But this is such a buzz phrase. And people on earth, I'm just going for it. I mean, this is just where we're going. Instead of more gingerly stepping in, this is just how it happens sometimes. But, as I receive the ideas and the topics to share, it just sometimes is more just forward like this. And honestly, the word power or empowerment starts lending towards people. People love to be victims on planet Earth. And I'm not for or against the word or for or against people that have been victims, like literally victims, or psychologically feeling like they're victims. I'm not pushing one way or the other because I always teach, stay in the center. Stay out of the whirlwind of opinions on planet Earth, the extremes of dualities, polarities, and conflicts. Stay in the center, the light of God beaming down into our hearts and souls, and let it guide us and illuminate us so that we can more clearly address issues that are out here more peripherally or extremely and embattled. Just stay in the center and see the truth of what is. And that's why a lot of times when I'm teaching, I'm really, really grateful that so many people will say, when you're sharing these things, it's almost like I knew that. I love that. A lot of teachers, their egos need to hear, wow, you're an amazing teacher. I've never, ever heard anybody say that before. It's brand new material. And many times it's brand new because it's ludicrous material and it has no basis in reality. But some people are like, they want new, so they get stroked, and then their teachers get stroked because it's brand new. There's a different way of teaching. Yeah, new is good. But what's beautiful is when it's not just new or old, it's so true that the students can feel it. The students being you, me, whomever, that we're feeling it. We can just tell, wow, there's something amazing about that sentence, that concept, that whatever it is, teaching, that whatever it is. You can just feel it reverberating, and it's truth resonating, reverberating with truth, like the tuning forks, bing, and then it just all of a sudden it starts creating a resonant vibration in another tuning fork. So it's God's tuning fork, so to speak, getting that chime, that ping, and then we feel it in our hearts and we go, there's something really great about that. And that's what happens when I'm teaching. I feel that, and I love that. And times that I've seen you guys exchange things on our Facebook pages or websites and blogs and even in classes. That's why I so often ask the students that are attending, or let's call them the attendees. I love, even if it's live like this on a show, when I hear the attendees sharing, there's such more often than not, there's a love, an integrity, a desire to be helpful, and a humility. And that makes all the difference because they're sharing from that place. When you mix things like love, clarity, and humility, and words like that, you almost can never go wrong, because the desire to be helpful is a way that we open up. A desire to be clear and effective is almost like affirming a filter so that everything is allowed to be clear and no garbage coming through, or we're not tainting the material. But also that humility is like it's sort of like a foundation, a grounding for the material, so that we're never allowing ourselves to receive ideas or material from each other or from wherever. It's not as quickly or easily going to get tainted, because there's this certain foundation of humility, and if anything doesn't resonate with it, we toss it. That's kind of a picture that I'm giving, how I've had it in my life. It's just like that. If something gets, and I know that there's musicians that are like that, historically speaking, that, John Lennon was a little bit like that, but and Harrison and certain other people, but they kind of felt a little sheepish when it came to fame. They said, we didn't mind being popular and we didn't mind being successful, but the word famous they didn't dig. They didn't want to be where everything's just hyped and so far out of proportion, and it caused a lot of them to kind of shy away or go underground, so to speak. So that humility, I think, is really important, but it shouldn't cause huge kind of reactions to life. But I think it's important. So always remember that as a student, a teacher, a healer, a counselor, always keeping in mind that we're here to serve. That's humility. Watch out for the games people will sometimes play to stroke the ego, and so, hopefully you get the point of that. But I'm leading to this, that a lot of times, we have misperceptions and misuses and overuse, really, and misuse these certain words, buzz phrases, you might call them. But one of them is empowerment. Oh my God, and we got to start with this. Many of you watching will have heard somebody say, or maybe you have said these words: that person took my power away. Okay, first, let me say this. I'm really sorry that that's happened. It's a drag when people just make you feel powerless, whether it's childhood abuses or adult manipulations or bosses that, abuse us and take advantage of us. Totally get it. And theoretically, energetically, what we mean by they took my power away, let's look at the potential authentic. What we really mean is, I feel so bummed. Let's look at it that way. A righteous way to say they took my power would be, instead of saying those words, I felt really bummed from that experience. I felt confused from that experience. See, that's true. Speak I, not they took, but I felt confused. I felt really sad, or whatever, something like that. Talk about what you were experiencing, what tipped you over, and what could or did right you, and get you back to center. That's a healthy way to say it. I have to tell you that the other way of saying it, which is in all kinds of books, popular books about people disempower us. Watch it, because people will take your power away. It's very clear. Listen to this. First of all, God creates you and I. God created us all. God did not create us with something that can be unplugged. Your power is not a stinking app that can be installed and uninstalled. It's there. It's a part of who we are. Come on, man. Our power. It's not a software that gets installed, uninstalled. It's an actual part of who we are. Our power is not a thing like a software downloaded. It's an actual integrated part of who we are. I'm not having power. I am power. Why am I power? Oh, because I'm a male, I'm a female, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm successful, whatever. No. I'm power because I'm made in the image of God, which means if I say you took my power away, it's saying you took God away. And that is not even possible, because God is actually not only within me, can't be taken, it's who I am. Oh, okay, there, let's rest with that moment. Let's just breathe that in for a moment. I'm not taking away from that you felt a certain way, but I'm saying let's get the words right. Somebody can't take your power away. And the only time it can feel like it, even if you want to say, yeah, but it felt like, man, they took my power. The only way someone can even feel like they take your power away is when you give it away. And even that's not really happening, but we can seem like we're giving our power away. An amazing individual some of you will have heard of is Viktor Frankl, an Auschwitz survivor. And I've shared the story before, so I'm only being brief with it. But, this is a guy who was in Auschwitz. Most of us could think of a lot of places we'd rather be, because it was such a horrendous, just a senseless and sick place in its inception and in its actions and so on. And yet this individual held his center somehow. I'm not saying he was never sad. I'm not saying he was never confused. Can't speak for him in that regard, but I think he fairly well held it together. What I do know is that at the end of the day, this individual shares with the world that one thing he learned was they never had the ability to take his power, other than when we give it. In other words, when you give up, You can't really give your power, but what seems like giving your power or losing your power is when you give up. You still haven't lost your power, but you lose sight of it when you give up. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense if you're in Auschwitz, if you're a child, you have a history of child abuse. I mean, I'm not saying that those individuals don't feel like their power's been taken. I'm just telling you factually it's not possible because your power is God. You are made in the image of God. The power is a permanent part of us. So I already said that, but it can feel like it's being taken. And for that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we do things that make us feel powerless. What I will say is this: Auschwitz survivor Viktor Frankl said, but you don't have to give up. It is still a choice. Well, but after they did this and that and the other, true. And it's a test, but you still don't have to give up. And try it another way. I'm not demeaning or belittling the hurts that have come to you, but I am saying if even one individual in all of history, if only one person was able to ever survive something that was ever worse than you or I experienced, it is then scientifically proven that it's been done. If one person in history pulled it off, it means it can be done. And if it can be done and I'm not doing it, it just means I'm not doing it. I'm not going to say we should add to our shame or our guilt around that or call ourselves failures. Instead, the opposite. Let's just breathe and go, wow, I had the power all along to really handle this. I don't mean handle it like pretend it didn't happen or something. I'm saying to survive it, to say at some point, no matter what has happened to me in Auschwitz or at home, no matter what has happened to me, I do not have to affirm that it has devastated me, even if it feels like it did. I just refuse to let it be so. I feel devastated, but I'm still not going to make that the final call. I'm just going to bounce back again and keep bouncing back, choose to bounce back. How am I doing this bouncing back? I wouldn't try to do it alone, I'll tell you that much. If you use your energy to bounce back and keep bouncing back, you will, eventually run out of the energy. You'll eventually be exhausted. Do your best to recognize it's, but through the power of God, but through the grace of God, I do this, I accomplish this. Stay connected, stay tethered to God, man. Connected so that you have a wellspring, a complete well, an unending well of fuel, of energy, of inspiration. It is possible and it's been done. So the way I look at things is if I can choose to identify with the person in my mind that collapsed versus the person in my mind that survived, I can choose to identify with one or another. And I do get to make that choice. So this concept again, empowerment, how beautiful. People cannot take your power away. So when you hear that, crap is the only word I can think of. When you hear that, I'll try to be really, really appealing to some of the more spiritual people that claim they're spiritual. Let me do this. When you hear such unspiritualized material being shared, say no. Just say no. Just don't wrong people, but just say, wow, yeah, you think so? Somebody took your power away. Hear them and feel for them. But you don't have to repeat that. You can even add and teach to people. I used to think my ex, took my power away. But oh my God, then I realized I was giving it too. I was handing it out. They would always make me feel ashamed. They would be the one that was an addict and they made me feel ashamed. They took my power away. They made me feel so small compared to them. They took care of all the money. They wouldn't let me have any. Took my power away, all this kind of stuff. They always said that they were the good looking one. They made me think that nobody would want me. Those are all ways, it's all it is it's mental abuse, but it's hypnotic. It's a negative form of hypnotism. When people make you think you're something you're not. Nobody will ever love you. Nobody wants you but me. You will never survive without my money. All it is a game of hypnotism, again, a negative form. It's not to be confused with self-hypnosis or therapeutic hypnosis, but it is a hypnotic game. And that's what they're doing. And so it seems like, because that's consistent, conducive with They took my power, meaning they put me in a trance and made me think I was or wasn't something that the opposite. So they made me think I was less than I really am, or they made me think I was flawed in some way when I'm not. So what do you want to do about that? Well, they took my power. So what do you want to do about it? Well, are you going to wait for them to snap their finger and say, you are now back to the room? Well, if somebody's got you hypnotized and they're sucking energy out of you, they're getting something out of that. If someone's manipulating you, which means seemingly taking your power away, if someone's doing that, they're probably gaining something from it. How many of them, what are the odds of, what proportion of them are going to say, God, I'm getting power from you, money from you, energy from you, whatever, accolades from you. I just don't feel it's right anymore. Let me give you back your power. Most people aren't going to do that. You have to kind of take it back. But again, the common saying is someone took it from me and I'm going to take it back. And then they got these new agey people, spiritual people, even the pop psychology followers, they're going to go, I took my power back, And if you come to me and you say that, I'm going to say, good for you. I'm not going to say anything to correct you. I'm going to say, good job. But as a teacher, when I'm not being asked by people or shared, people sharing their story with me of success, I'm not going to wrong them. But when I'm talking like this, it's my turn to share my thoughts about it. So I can kind of share and say what I feel about this. So when someone says, hey, I took my power back. Okay, well, good. I'm glad you took it back. I know that you couldn't have really given it away, but you felt like you did. You're taking it back, didn't really take it back. It felt like you did. So you felt like you lost it. You felt like you took it back. Fine. Now you're back to square. That's cool. Let's move forward now. I'm all for that. Now, on the same topic, empowerment, as you've heard me say about a lot of topics, what could empower you more than to connect with God? Empowerment does not come from well, there's another talk we might have someday. Just like somebody took my power, there's another one. I found my voice. They took my voice away. Unless they're a virus that affects your vocal cords, how did they take your voice away? I'm not dissing the concept overall. I'm just saying that be careful of the wording. People cannot take your voice. What you mean is what? What you mean is they would react negatively when I expressed my feelings because they can't take it away. And if they made you keep it in, you could have screamed it louder. I'm not saying you should have. I'm saying you could have. So they can't actually remove your vocal cords with behaviors. They can only oppress you in behavior, and then we let them oppress us. Well, they took my power away. Well, get a divorce. Walk away. Well, that was my mother. I'm supposed to be nice to her the rest of her life. No, walk away. But it was my husband. It was my children. My best friend since middle school. Then you're disempowering yourself if you're going to use excuses to not walk away from somebody that treats you like you're garbage. So we need to take our own power back, but from ourselves. In other words, we have to tear up our own contracts. It's not about hating those other people or showing them a thing or two. I'm going to get my power back and, tear up the contract and throw the pieces at them. All that sounds good when we're really pissed off or hurt by people. It makes good for good dramatic representation. I threw it in their face, or I visualized, I was at a meditation class and it was all about empowerment. So I pictured slapping the face of that person that cheated on me, or I stomped on the foot of the person that used to be mean to me. That's just still human-based revenge, and that's not empowering, because it's a temporary revenge, but you haven't found tranquility or inner peace, have you? You just vented, which feels good. If you're about to sneeze, you sneeze and let it out. Oh, that feels better. But if you have a cold or allergies going on, one sneeze doesn't mean you're cured. It just means you relieved the sensation. So, you sneezed, you vented, you told them a thing or two in your meditation or whatever other form it was. But did you heal? And venting is not healing. Venting can actually prevent you from healing if you don't see what you're doing. Venting can have like 5%, maybe even less, of venting can be therapeutic. The rest of it is non-therapeutic and unhealthy. But there is a therapeutic variety. How do you know if it's therapeutic or not? One is if you're taking responsibility. If you lay on a pillow, on a bed and you scream into a pillow, some of your hurts, that's venting. But are you doing it to cause harm in any way? No, good. Then it's more likely therapeutic. Are you doing it because other people took your power, or somebody has power over you? No, you don't want to do it that way. You don't want to do it for revenge. If you're doing it so that you can face your own feelings, you're halfway there doing it therapeutically. The other half of that is not only am I wanting to see and feel and process my own feelings, but I'm creating an empty space with which God can fill, into which God can fill me with its presence. Into that space I created, I scream and then breathe in something else, you see. So it's therapeutic because it's got that full holistic process to it. So empowerment, people taking our power away, just messed up words. So as I get to the second half of this, it's interesting because I see sometimes in talks I've done, or people that write letters, emails to me, or share things on Facebook. It's interesting because, people will take stands on things. There are people who seem aggressive and hurtful, and they act out. They kind of abuse people. They diss them. I'm not interested in what you have to say. So and this is often made to be a certain type of person. It's often projected onto males or Republicans or certain races or whatever that are more owning the rest of the world, or aggressive, or the power people, the money people. That's often the kinds of groups we put in that side of the field. On the other side, we have victims instead of victimizers. We have victims. Often softer people, feminine people, creative people. And it's amazing because the world does make it look this way. It looks like this is a solid case. There are the abusers and the abusees. Spirit cannot see a victimizer and a victim. It cannot see that. Spirit cannot see. Spirit's wondering why neither of you are here in the center. Your power is here in your center. Nobody else has it. If you swung over there or over there to one side or another, or allowed people to affect you to, seemingly cause you to swing to one side or another, I'm so fed up with the world, I'm going to become a control freak and I'm over at one side. You're not in your center, you're not in power. Yes, I am. I control companies. You're not at all in power, not spiritually. You're behaving in power to compensate for your lack of power in the center. Then there's the victims that swing over here. I'm not the ones that are fed up and took power. I'm the ones who are getting fed up. I'm just broken. I don't know where my voice is. I don't know how to think or express. What do I do? If I even express, I get stomped on. So these are the victims. And they too, just like the other, they too have allowed something to swing them out of center. So we're responsible, guys, whether we swing this direction or that, we're responsible for A, losing our center, which is also known as B, losing our sense of power. True spiritual power. You're not empowered over there. These people over here on the passive, ultra passive side, excessively passive side, are often, talking as though we're healing. We're finding our voice. We're fed up with those other kinds of people in the world. We've become spiritual. Sometimes we even talk softer. And look at us. We're no longer like them. We're going to find our voice because we've been broken. We're going to find our voice. But wait, did they find their voice and come to the center? No. They found their voice by finding other victims that would support them in being victims. Have you been hurt? Me too. Let's empower each other. And all you're doing is enabling each other's BS. You did not. You can't find your power without center, which is God. You can't do anything without God. Only God is real. If you think you're doing anything real, it's got to be here. You can't justify something over there or over there as being God. And these people would not agree with that. The hyper-passive people would not agree with this. And yet, they would say that these controlling people who have found what they think is power, like, I don't need God. I've shown I can have power by just ruling companies. These guys would never buy that. And yet they expect everybody to buy their version, their false, broken version of, empowerment. So, I see people talk about this, and, I've seen it come up in my life, whatever the case may be. And I would like to say, I can't say that my movement from center in all my decisions, I would like to think that most of them stay fairly close to center. Most things that have to do with choices or power or empowerment or whatever, I would like to think most of them they might swing a little to the right or left within that parameter that is center. Sometimes they might even break out of the line a little, but I would like to think that most of the time I can stay somewhat in here. At least that's my intention, my goal. At least I know this is where the truth is. Even if I flip to one end or the other, I can't do it for very long because I know this is the only one that's true. And that's what I'm recommending to you. So we have decisions to make. And in my own personal life, for example, let's say, God, even the editors and publishers and people behind A Course in Miracles, they had a decision to make. We're going to publish this material, which is great material, right? And somebody's offering money for it, but they didn't feel right about the first person that offered to finance it. Internally, they knew it wasn't right. So they said no. Common sense, like let's pretend that who was giving them the money was somebody way over here, really yucky money people and aggressive people that were going to try to rip them off for the material. It's right to say no to them. What if it was the other side? What if it was people that were like, oh, let us publish your material because we believe in peace and love, and we pray, we wear, peace beads and pray to Bobby Sherman, So if these people over here wanted to publish it, you would also be right to say no to them because chances are they would never remember to get anything done. They wouldn't remember to get it to the printer on time because they were being. So you would be right to say no to them just as well as the other extreme. But both are going to complain that you're doing the wrong thing. How dare you, this one will say. How dare you, this one will say. And they're going to try to shame you out of your center. And this is constantly what the world does. So what they're doing is they're out of center, the other group's out of center. They cannot stand the idea that you're in your center. When you make decisions that are coming from clarity, from the inner version of love, not external false versions of love, but the really true centered love and peace and guidance. They have to try to break you out of that because, and I've learned this many times over and over in my life, first of all, misery loves company. Or as they say, water seeks its own level, but misery loves company. So they don't want you in this center. But the more you're in your center, the more you're going to aggravate them because you're going to mirror to them that they're not in their center. And so what they're going to do, whether they seem to be aggressive people or passive people, they're both going to attack one way or the other. They're going to find a way, aggressively or passively. Remember, passive-aggressive is just as annoying as aggressive. Both of them are going to find a way to try to make you wrong for holding your center. And they'll try all kinds of things. You remember in TV shows, they would call this the good cop, bad cop routine. It's still the aggressive cop that's saying, I'm going to get you, and the good cop that says, why don't we work things out? They're both out for their same purpose. They're trying to get you to not keep your story. In crime, it would be your false story, that your lies. But in spirit, it's your reality. And they're trying to get you out of that. So I've seen this happen, in my own life, teaching, touring, writing a book on sacred sexuality. There's people that, got flippy about that, weird about that. And some of them were from this side, some of them were that side. And it wasn't easy. to hold a center. I knew it was right. I felt that it was right. Everything in me, it seemed right. But when people are pummeling you with, the guilts and shames and all the crap about a topic like, for example, like that, just like when you set boundaries with a family member, some family members are going to say, "How dare you?" That's those over there. The others are going to say, "Oh, can't we just all get along?" You see? They do the softer version, but they're both doing the same thing. They're both trying to say, "How dare you have a third option called your center? You need to choose. Be hateful like us, be falsely loving like them, like us, and you're doing a different option." Okay? So your option is to, and it's not easy, but it's like saying, like Auschwitz survivor Viktor Frankl, to be able to say, in this situation, there are aggressive people causing harm. There are also people on this other extreme that are saying, we're just broken. We're broken by these other people. We're victims. We're prisoners. And Viktor Frankl said he could always tell which people imprisoned were going to die next. And it's the ones that lost hope. They had nothing to live for. And I'm not saying that what's been happening to you is great. I'm saying when you lose hope, technically, I'm sorry, man, but technically, we're the ones who chose to lose hope. Well, what else was I going to do? There was no hope. There was nothing I could do. Externally, sometimes there seems like there isn't anything you can do, but you didn't have to give up internally. And if you stay connected enough to God, and we can't judge somebody just because they've given up that they're good or bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying they can do what they want. I know that I have to do my part to not lose hope spiritually. Even if I give up on something externally. You know what I call that, guys? Do what you can and accept what you can't. So I will kick butt and move forward and do what I can. And some days, guess it's not working. That doesn't mean I have to feel hopeless. I just externally accept something's not going to happen today. So we have to recognize that people play these games, these two extremes. And I hope this metaphor is making sense more than it is annoying you, but this is kind of how this works. And so it's really a brilliant thing because it takes a really unique person to be able to see through this. Usually it's easy to see aggressive people suck. That one's easy. Aggressive people, they're mean, they're controlling and all that. But it's really hard to see through the false, appearance of innocence in these other people. Because they're going to do the same thing. They're still going to equally try to shame you, blame you, pull on you. They're just going to cry a little while they're doing it. That doesn't mean they're more righteous than the other. The others just harden themselves so they don't cry. They scream more. But they're both trying to do the same thing. Trying to pull you out of your power or act as though they can do that. So as I'm sort of going towards a close here now, it's an interesting thing. I notice another example in my life is like I've been at Unity of Sedona for, I think, 7+ years as a spiritual leader. And it's very interesting because Sedona is a town of enabling. Okay? Yeah, it has red rocks too, and vortexes, but they don't say Sedona, the town, you'll hear, the town of vortexes, the psychic town, or, all these cool things, but they don't say, come to Sedona, the town of enabling, but there's a lot of that here. It's a town of a lot of unhealthy behaviors. And what they do is they have a contract with each other. This is my perception. There's a contract they have with each other too. You don't call me on my stuff, I won't call you on yours, and we'll all just be equally dysfunctional. There's a lot of that. There's also a lot of incredibly sincere, humble. That's how you'll know if they're sincere and good people, if there's humility. You find a lot of good, humble people. They are sincere students on the path. A lot of times they get taken by the people of those other two extremes. There's people that will manipulate tourists or manipulate new residents or long-term residents from one side. And there's the other that do this little game playing, that enables certain things, So when you come to a town like this or whatever, you have a family, it could be, for you, your metaphor could be your family, or your example could be your family. For me, I'm just sharing an example of having come here. And it's a brilliant thing because There have been some overtly hurtful people in the town who have been teachers, who have been organizations, or even just observers of it that were overtly critical about some of the people, teachers in this town. So there's the aggressive, assertive ones, overly assertive ones. But then there's also these other ones. And, we see that at Unity of Sedona. They'll come to Unity and they might say, aggressive people. And the same as I advise you. We're in our center, they're doing one or the other. The aggressive people act out. We say, that's not okay. Would you like to work on that? Because we'll help you. So you do what you can to help. But you draw a line. Healthy people know how to draw a line in the sand. A line that's relative to the aggressive, a line relative to the passive aggressive ones. But you draw a line in the sand and say, here's my center. I'll help you if you want to come towards my center. From my center, I can help you. If you expect me to walk towards your space, your extreme over there, can't do it. Would you like to join me? You say this to husbands, wives, partners, children, parents, whomever, whatever, wherever. This is my space. Can this work? And, aggressive ones would just get more aggressive because they'd realize, I can't seem to break through the walls. Because when you're spiritual, man, and you have healthy boundaries, they're almost basically impenetrable walls. They're not really walls, but they're impenetrable barriers. They call it the shield of the Lord. You got this great energy. So these people are hammering away, and it's like, whoa. And you just hold your center, and then they get really angry, so they go off and do more hateful things towards you and about you. But then there's the other side. People will come to Unity of Sedona, and they'll say, would you do this for me? Oh, well, since you're so soft, yes. Would you do that too? Okay. And this too? And eventually you go, didn't we already do that for you? Oh yeah, but I'm going to need more of something or other. Oh, okay. And you give a little bit. Because they're being passive, you give a little bit more. It's okay because they're less intense and invasive, so there's less necessity to as immediately set a line here, but you play with it. But how long are you going to play with those kinds of people? And eventually we say, no. What do you mean no? I've been attending here. Or what do you mean no? I don't have any money. What do you mean no? I have babies I can't feed. Then we say, well, stop having them. Don't try to put that on us and pull us to your problems. We'll help you if you'll come to the center, to a good, healthy center. Let us advise you. Don't just try to project your stuff on us and tell us we're responsible. But I'm homeless, but I'm this, it doesn't matter. I have no limbs, it doesn't matter. Don't keep adding stories to it to try to get our, what you think is called compassion, which in fact, it's actually just enabling. So at some point we'll say no. And it's amazing because aggressive people, you almost expect they're going to get angry and aggressive. But these sweet, sweet people, some of them are your family members, remember, these sweet, And then when you say, no, Mom, no more of this. Husband, wife, partner, that's the end. It's amazing to watch. I love you. They say on Christmas, they say on your birthday or their birthday or whatever, they say I love you when you do what they want. As soon as you say no, the passive people will either rear up and jump to this side and become overtly angry, which nobody expected, or they will just play a little bit more. The passive, it takes a little more technique on their part to maintain a passive face when in fact they're enraged at you. But some of them pull it off. So we get this a lot. We'll get when it happens, it's just been a consistent thing. I've seen this on planet Earth throughout my life, throughout our lives. And I've seen it even in a town like this because here you have the best of the best actors, so to speak. And you have to be really good at holding your center to be able to say, no, it just, they have to recognize they're not going to get that from you. I have to admit, coming here, I didn't know the town, and I didn't know or expect this level of intensity of these games. So I can admit that my center's here, but the aggressive and the passive ones pounding from both sides. That's called fighting something on two fronts. It's not easy. It's almost impossible. So, we're fighting this on two fronts, wondering what is all this? The competitiveness, the ego that goes on in the town or in some of the spiritual communities around the world. fighting this on two fronts was very wearing for many months. It affected me energetically. It affected health a little bit. I mean, it really was breaking me down in a lot of ways. But they can't take my power. Remember, I said that. So if I were to say, gosh, and then they all took my power away, that's not possible. So when you see what's happening and you recalibrate and you don't try to kiss the feet of this group or this group, they're going to hate you. They're going to act out. They're going to voice. They're going to vent. And you just hold your center. And some of them are going to go away. Some loudly and some silently, but they're going to probably go away. Very few people, when they see you hold your center and you say, I am committed to not getting my power back, but being my power. When you say, I'm committed to being in my center with God, people don't go, oh, I was aggressive in the old days, but not with you anymore because I see that you're centering, and nor the other group. They don't, because misery loves company. They need to take you out of your center. If you get out of your center, only you allowed that to happen. So keep this in mind. The people with the tears in their eyes that say, you're not very loving because you turned your back on that group or a person here and a person there. What they're doing right then is passive aggressive behavior. They're telling you what you did was wrong. Wait, what was wrong again? You were turning your back on people, and that's not very loving. So you're telling me what love is. For me. You're telling me, for me, what love is. Instead of saying, did that feel right for you? And letting me say yes or no. You're telling me, which means you're judging and attacking. Why would you be doing that if you were in your center? You must not be in your center. So I don't need to hear that. Thank you. And if that person does that again and again, you might have to turn your back on them as well. And you're probably going to hear from them, get a letter, an email, or whatever it is. You're not very loving and so on. And you just have to say, don't try to educate them. Most of the time, they're not going to be open to that. If they are open to it, try. But most aren't going to hear that because they don't want you to change their mind. They don't want to know that what they're doing is a game. They have a self-righteousness to them, these kinds of people. And I know for some of you it's hard to hear it because it's your best friend's sister, it's your child, it's your mom, whomever. These are all just other versions of codependent behaviors. In a way, this talk is about codependence and boundaries because you can't talk about empowerment or having your power, losing your power, getting your power back without addressing the fact that this is all about boundaries. That these lines are boundaries and codependence. When you let go of these lines and allow yourself to be hit by these other people energetically, or you bargain your center away to get their approval, it's all a lack of, it's all codependence and a lack of boundaries. So, please keep this in mind. And I know that, for some of you, it's hard to hear these things because some of you maybe could say to yourselves, wow, I think I've done a little of that here and there. Great. Repent. If you've done it to me or somebody else, just say, wow, I can see where I was, trying to guilt you into staying in a relationship with me, or I can see where I was, trying to shame you into this or that, or whatever, to make you feel lesser. When you see those things, if it's appropriate, if it brings more good than harm, then confess it. That's one of the terms for it, right? Apologize and make amends. You can clear that up really quickly. At least you make an attempt to do so. But you don't do so if it'll cause more harm than good. Never do anything that'll cause more harm than good. And sometimes even an apology could cause more harm than good because I'm just making up examples, but just as an example. Sometimes an apology to somebody, if it's going to more inflate their ego and they'll cause even more harm afterwards, it's probably not a good idea. So once in a while, it's not the healthy thing, or making amends. If somebody's going to just get more triggered by you saying, listen, hi, it's me, and you're there to say sorry, and yet they're like, oh my God, and they get all triggered, you're doing more harm than good. And there's another one where I've heard people say, I was just trying to apologize. I was just coming from a place of love. And there's a part of me that can go, I think that you did good, you tried, and at least you tried, good job. And there's a part of me that wants to say, knock it off, you passive aggressive ass, because you're trying to get me to buy into the fact that poor you got shunned by them when in fact you knew. I told you and other people told you. Restraining orders might have told you, do not contact that person. And then you go out and you just have to do it because you were feeling guided. But in fact, when it blew up and it caused more harm, you have to own you screwed up. You were trying to be egotistic and you disguised it as some benevolent behavior, and it wasn't at all. It was just another venting of the ego, and it was your way of trying to get them to go, it's okay, so that you could feel better, and so on and so on. There's all kinds of pieces to it. And forgive some of my languaging sometimes and what seems so disrespectful, but I'm just, in the mood sometimes. So bear with, and like I said, now closing completely. I pray this has made good sense, and that it feels applicable. Even if things make sense, if they don't feel like you can apply them, then I would kind of feel like a little remiss, like I must have missed something and I could have, would have, should have said more. So if ever you can ask, I hope it's clear enough. But before you do ask me or email and say, tell me more about this or that, please try to check out the videos. They're online, they're readily available, most of them for free. And at least do your part to study a little bit, do your homework, because you'll find the answers are already out there. That way I don't, have to answer the same question numerous times. It's just easier for time and energy, right? So like I said, I pray that all that's made sense, but watch the games. If you're doing the games at all, if you've ever seen that you've done the games, try to apologize and make amends, but only if that seems appropriate and helpful. But when others are doing it, always love and forgive. Stay in your center doesn't mean put on armor and fight them off because you're in your center, you're right. That one's wrong because they're aggressive. That one's wrong because they're passive aggressive, and you're right because you're in your center. Actually, if you're armed for a fight constantly in your righteousness, you actually are slipping towards one of those other two and not realizing it. At the end of the day, when I say you're centered, doesn't mean you're affirming right and they're wrong. It's right, and just stay in the right consciousness. That's where that word righteousness comes from, right consciousness. Don't right and wrong anybody else. Just I'm doing what I can to be true to myself in right consciousness. And people will say, you think you're so righteous. I only know that I'm doing my best to maintain my healthy boundaries. And that kind of centeredness, calmness, clarity, they won't always dig you for it. I'd love to tell you they would. If you just say this, they're going to all be nice to you. It doesn't work that way. But in your centeredness, it's kind of an amazing thing because you're this tree, little tree at first, very fine roots at first, not established, but the winds come and they blow, and it's an amazing thing because the tree, although the winds are blowing, every time they do, the tree's roots actually grab a little more into the soil. It's what they're doing. They feel something blowing, so they actually grip. And that's why they keep growing and extending, because they are not only searching water, they're establishing their foundation. And that's what happens for you and I, at least what could happen. We can turn the winds of the world and the winds coming from the hot air out of these people complaining at us, we can turn that into just establishing better roots. And not even, the tree doesn't sit there and get angry at the wind that blew last week. It blew, we dug in more, and we centered more, right? We just held and developed more strength. All we know is that we're stronger today. That's all we know. We don't think about what wind blew or why or hate it. We just know that we're clearer and stronger. So the people that do try to push you one way or the other, in a way, they're helping your roots to get more firm, more solid. And so in that sense, we're grateful for all those kinds of behaviors. Are they nice behaviors? No, maybe not. Are they sweet? Do they make us feel grand? No, probably not. And it would be beautiful if that didn't happen, that stuff. I know everybody only lived love, but guess what? It's not what's happening right now. So right now, our job is to hold the center that most highly represents the only real world, where there is only love. So boundaries and clarities are actually our little microcosmic version of heaven for now. They're not hard, they're not defenses, they're not hateful, they're not holding grudges. They're just simply my little heaven right here and now. So it's an amazing thing to imagine that your tenacity when it comes to your power and your clarity is your way of establishing your little bit of heaven here on earth. And by doing so, you're actually teaching other people about it. They may not act like you're teaching them. They may not like it, but it's pretty amazing when you can look back and say to people, wow, when you set some boundaries with me, years ago, I got to tell you, thank you. I mean, there's friends that I remember from high school that might have been getting a little out of line. And, and I was a kid, I only handled things as well as I did at the time. But I remember some older guy coming to a party with my friends and I, and we tried to stay pretty clean. But we're having a little party and some guy brought some hard drugs there and he started giving him some of the younger kids. I didn't take kindly to it, but when I told him no, he reacted and, before you knew it, he was out of the building. Let's just put it that way. You say no. Sometimes you have to be firmer about it. I don't believe I ever did those things like if I had to take action. I hope I never hated when I did it. And that's the hope of all of us. Let's do these things without hating. How can I do this from love? Then keep praying. Take your actions, but ask God to be with you when you're taking your actions, okay? Thanks again. Lots of love to you all. Blessings. Thanks for your patience and for your willingness to keep learning. Join us because remember, every 9:45 Arizona time, just about every Sunday of the year, we're doing the live presentations and Facebook Live from Unity of Sedona. You can look on my website if there's other things you'd like to learn about my 5-day intensives. I've got one coming up on Living Mastery coming up. It's around June. It's April or May or somewhere in there. That's once a year, and then in the fall, Christ Consciousness, a 5-day intensive. So I only do those twice a year. And if you're interested, we're also going to take a group of people to visit John of God. I think is a wonderful, humble, very amazing faith healer, the number one faith healer on the planet, but very trippy, spiritualism channeled, kinds of healing for people, and I think it's well worth it. You don't have to go see him in person. If you or someone you love or know are sick and they're open to it, you might recommend just contacting them for one of the translators or assistants there, and just ask for a long distance healing. It's prayer, it's donation basis, $100 or so on an average, and I just love masters. I love masters in of any kind, and he's a prayer spiritual master, and I love that. I love his humility and the effects he's had on probably now over 1 million people, and that's amazing for a spiritual individual without an established religion or whatever. Thank God, having such an effect. So I'm really, really amazed at that person and at you for being on the path that you're on. So thank you guys, and if there's anything else you need to know subject-wise or material-wise, you can contact us for private sessions with me, phone or in person, and whatever else. You can find out details like that, more details if you like, on our website, okay? God bless you all. Many blessings, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.